What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my walkthrough for the challenges for Duels of the Planeswalkers 2013. Today we're going to be taking on Obliterate This. This is an awesome challenge, actually. I really like this one because it's taking on one of the most powerful cards in this format. And showing you that even when you're up against something that strong, you can still come up with a way to win. It also uses a pretty cool mechanic called Undying, which I don't believe we've seen before in the previous games. Actually, we did, because they came out with the zombie DLC. So never mind, that's a bullshit lie. Anyway, Obliterate This. Your opponent has arrested all your creatures and has reduced you to 2 life with the terrifying Phyrexian Obliterator. Can you escape your fate and win by the end of your next turn? Oh man, Phyrexian Obliterator is an amazing card. It's really good. We're gonna get in here and just see how it works and what it's done to us. Not to mention the fact that we've been arrested. Our development is going no friggin' where. So let's take a look at their side of the field here, starting with Phyrexian Obliterator. Amazing card. For 4 simple mana, just 4 little swamps, you're able to cast this creature horror with Trample, and every time a source deals damage to Phyrexian Obliterator, the source's controller sacrifices that many permanents. Now, I cannot tell you, my favorite deck to run in this format is the black deck. I love that deck, and I cannot tell you how many people do not understand this card. Just completely do not understand this card. The amount of time someone has cast Corrupt or Shadows of Corruption on this card, and I just sit there and I tear up. I'm laughing so hard at them, because that is the worst play imaginable. Because, I'm just gonna, quick aside here, just so that you never make this mistake. Those cards, first of all, deal damage. Anything that says deal damage, especially if, those people are running the black deck, so they have other removal. If you have any way to get rid of this guy without dealing damage, do that. Journey to Nowhere, anything that exiles it, murders, something that makes your opponent sack it, anything. Look for a way to get rid of this card that doesn't deal it damage. But the last thing you want to do is deal damage to it equal to the amount of swamps you control. Because if you have 14 swamps, sure, you're going to gain that life back, but you have to sack 14 permanents. The thing with this card, and the thing that people don't understand, I don't think, is that you don't stop dealing damage when a creature dies. If it has 5 defense and you cast 100 damage, some kind of spell that'll do 100 damage to it, it does the full 100. There's no mercy rule in this game. So just remember that when you're facing this card. Never forget that Phyrexian Obliterator, that when you cast, really never forget that when you cast a spell that deals damage, it's going to deal all of that damage to the creature. It doesn't stop when it is dead. So there we go, Phyrexian Oblit. We also have this friggin' shitty gargoyle thing, which is in every single one of these challenges. I do not understand why. And she's got 5,000 mana. I don't even know. She's got no cards though, so she's not doing too good. We've got Rage Nimbus here, which is a defender with flying. We can tap 1 in a mountain. Target creature attacks this turn if able. He's arrested, though. All of our creatures are actually arrested, so we're not going to go into that. Arrest just means that we can't attack or block with that creature, and its activated abilities cannot be activated. So that's kind of a big pain in the ass. So pretty much all of our cards are kind of dead right now on the table, but we've got tricks here. When Exceeda Scrapmiller enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact. That's pretty awesome because they do have an artifact over on that side of the field. We've also got this guy right here, Flare of the Hatebound, which is a really awesome card, and it utilizes the Undying mechanic, like I was saying. Undying basically is that when this creature dies for the first time, if it has not died before, and if it has no +1/+1 counters on it, it's going to come out of your graveyard, and it's going to hit the field again. And that it's only if it has no +1/+1 counters on it. So if you have a card that can remove counters from especially this guy, he is amazing because you can just keep killing it and casting it. Basically, it's going to keep doing that damage because Whenever Flare the Hatebound or another creature enters the battlefield from the graveyard, that creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. So basically what I'm saying there is that if you have a way to remove that +1/+1 counter from Undying, because Undying, like I said, I'm going to try and explain it a little bit better this time. The creature's going to hit the graveyard, and if it went into the graveyard with no +1/+1 counters on it, you're going to essentially recast it without paying the mana cost from the graveyard back onto the battlefield at the end of turn. Or right after it dies, actually. So if you have a way to remove a +1/+1 counter from this guy and you just keep having him come back, that's pretty damn good. He's also arrested, so that's a problem. And then we've got what will end up being the MVP for this particular challenge, War Priest of Thune. When he enters the battlefield, you destroy target enchantment, and right away that should trigger something because we are arrested all up on ourselves. Nobody's going anywhere. In our hand, we got a Fist full of instants. We got target creature gains Undying until end of turn, sees the initiative, which is in all of these too. I don't understand. And we've also got Cloud Shift, which is one of my personal favorite cards. I've got a bounce deck that works really well, actually, in IRL. So Cloud Shift is like MVP in that deck. That thing's friggin' amazing. So it's basically going to let us shift out one of these creatures, which right away, two cards look really awesome right off the bat. We got Undying Evil, which looks fantastic, and we've also got the Cloud Shift, which also is going to just make us start coming up with some strategies here. Now, it is important to keep in mind that activated abilities are going to be anything in front of the colon. So even this guy over here, even this right here, this one and a mountain is an activated ability, even though it doesn't require him to tap. The reason you're able to use abilities that are like this the turn they come under control and they aren't affected by Summoning Sickness is because Summoning Sickness specifically states that your creature can't tap the turn it comes under your control. So even though they're both activated abilities, these are fair game, whereas your tap ones are not. It's not really important in this scenario, but it's just a kind of important aside to keep in mind. We're not really going to worry about that guy because his ability is not too useful to us right now anyway. The thing with Cloud Shift is that when we shift out one of our creatures, it essentially becomes a new creature, so the arrest or whatever will fall off of it essentially when it is in exile. So we could go ahead and free this guy up and destroy his artifact, destroy Liliana's artifact. We could free this guy up just so that he could attack again. Really, it's not going to do anything because it's not going to trigger his ability because it's not from the graveyard. Or we could Cloud Shift War Priest of Thune, which really, when we think about it, is the only option that we have, because War Priest of Thune is going to free him from his arrest, and it's also going to allow us to target one of the arrests on one of these other creatures. So that is going to be the very first thing we do. It's going to go ahead and free our War Priest, and we're going to go ahead and select the creature that's going to be most useful to us in a combat scenario, which is going to be Flare right here. So we're going to remove the arrest from him because we want him in this battle, because if he dies, he comes back and deals damage to Liliana. Now we're in a tight spot here because it's 20-2, so we need to deal as much damage as possible to her. So now that we've done all that, that's kind of the prep work that we needed to do to get ready for the actual challenge, which is our attack step. Now, we have seized the initiative, which we might not have been looking at because we're trying to come up with some way to deal direct damage to her, some way to get her dead, or get her down to lethal swing-in damage right away. But there's really no way for us to do that. So now it's time for us to look and seize the initiative a little bit more. It's going to give our creature first strike. So that is one thing. It's also not a counter. It's just +1/+1 until end of turn. So if we cast it on our Undying creature, it's still going to be able to come back if it were to die in battle. The other thing we have to look at is the fact that we have Phyrexian Obliterator over here waiting, willing, and able to just destroy whatever permanents we have to get rid of if we end up killing it. So it's pretty difficult, but we have to get rid of Phyrexian Obliterator this turn. Otherwise, there's no way we can win, because it'll just trample over us and kill us, and we'll lose most of our creatures anyway. So what we have to look at is the fact that we have Seize the Initiative and the secret winner of this challenge, Undying Evil. Now, we can't forget Flayer of the Hellbound's second power, other than Undying, is that any creature comes out of the graveyard, it's going to deal damage to Liliana. So now we just start looking at which creatures have the highest mana cost and who we would want to see come back. And that would actually be this guy right here. Has the highest mana cost and also has an ability that will be triggered when he comes back out of the yard. So with all that in mind, I'm going to kind of walk through this as we do it. We're going to move to attack step, and I'm just going to show you how this kind of works. There's really only one way to do this. I mean, it's kind of a stumper of a puzzle, because there's not a lot of options for you to look at. There's really just, other than which creatures to unarrest, there's really not much else that we can look at here. Flayer the Hatebound doesn't have Summoning Sickness, so he's going to go ahead and attack. We're going to go ahead and say go. Liliana's going to make the only choice that she can make, which is to have Phyrexian Obliterator block him. Now this next part is where things get really tricky. The first thing we want to do is cast Seize the Initiative on our buddy here. Now, this could make us a little worried for a couple of different reasons. First of all, Flayer the Hatebound's not going to die, which means that his Undying ability won't trigger, it won't damage Liliana. But there is an aspect of this that we might not initially see at first, which is the fact that Phyrexian Obliterator makes us sack what will be 5 permanents, which means that we can effectively kill whatever creatures we want to. So we're going to use this opportunity to cast Undying Evil on this guy right here, and then we're going to let the damage resolve. Phyrexian Obliterator is going to die, his ability is going to trigger, and now it's up to us to get rid of as many permanents as we desire. Now the thing with this is that the very first 2 guys we want to get rid of are the Undying guys, because that's going to trigger Flayer's ability, and that's going to trigger the ability where we get to destroy an artifact. The next thing that we have to do is get rid of either some of our lands or this card right here. Now personally, I like to get rid of Rage Nimbus, because I don't know what we're going to draw, so I want to kind of keep my mana open. The other thing with this is that, I mean, she gets another turn and we get another turn, so I want to get rid of the mana that I feel is going to allow me to make a comeback here, which are just the extra mana that I have. Now I have 1 of each color. I mean, I don't really know this deck, so that might not be the best play, but that's just how I want to play this right now. We want to do our damage straight to Liliana. It's going to take her down to 15. As Flayer comes back. This is going to go ahead and destroy target artifact. It's also going to damage Liliana. Yeah, not me. That's not the play. It's going to take her down to 11. It's going to go and be her turn. She's going to draw a card. Could be anything, but it's actually just a swamp. Personally, I would have kept it in hand, like, just to make me sweat it a little bit more. But with this, we obviously win. We have lethal on the board, 11 damage coming straight at her. And that's how you win that challenge. It's a pretty complicated challenge. It's kind of tricky. It's one of the more difficult challenges, that's for sure. Just because there's seemingly insurmountable odds against us. And it's kind of difficult to see how we can utilize Undying in that creative way to make sure that she dies on our next turn. There's also a lot of chance involved in that. In like a real life scenario, I would have been scared to death of her drawing that card. But for the most part, she has an empty field and we have 3 rather powerful guys out. The fact that she has a ton of mana and I have none is rather worrisome. But obviously it worked out for us there. But that's really the only thing that you can do in that instance. Which is really the best thing that you can come out of this challenge with, is the fact that when you have to sack permanents or when you sack permanents, it's not always a bad thing if you do it correctly. We actually used Phyrexian Obliterator's ability to win that challenge. So whenever you come up against a card like that, something with Annihilator, something that's just really going to obliterate your side, you really have to pay careful attention to what you have on the field, and you won't always have the nuts like we did right there, but there can be ways out of those situations by sacking the right thing at the right time. So anyway, I hope this episode helped you out. I know it was there was a lot of exposition in it. There was a lot going on. I hope I didn't move too fast for you guys. I tried to make it easy to understand, but that is a pretty tricky challenge. So I hope you at least got the steps for it right, and you got those down. Thanks a lot for watching, you guys. I will see you tomorrow.